I want to welcome you to the overview of the 2022 Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities program, which is offered by the Office of Digital Humanities at the National Endowment for the Humanities. I want to thank you for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Cerventi, and I'm a Senior Program Officer here in the Office of Digital Humanities. So a few housekeeping issues before we begin. Live closed captioning is available by clicking on the CC button, which is in the bottom right corner of your Teams window. There's also a Q&A or question and answer box available within the Teams website where you can submit questions anonymously and privately during the presentation. You should feel free to pose questions as they occur to you during the webinar, and we'll try to answer them at the end of today's session. So during today's presentation, I want to do the following. I want to review the mission of the Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities program. We're going to look at some of the funding statistics for this program over the last 5 years. We'll note the deadlines and the eligibility requirements. We'll discuss how to plan your application. We'll review the review criteria. And then we'll, of course, discuss the application and review process for this particular program. I'll point you to some resources that we have available on the NEH website. We'll note the due dates that you'll want to keep in mind as you're beginning to prepare to submit an application. And then I'll make sure that we end by having contact information so that you know where to send the drafts and to follow up with any questions that you may have. But we'll be sure to leave some time at the end of today's webinar for your questions. We will also note that this webinar is being recorded, and we'll make it, the slide deck with the links, and a transcript available as soon as possible on the program resource page for the Institutes for Advanced Topics program as soon as possible. So you don't need to feel as if you need to copy the information on every slide. The Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities program in the Office of Digital Humanities is the one that supports professional development. We in the Office of Digital Humanities think it's important to provide opportunities for humanities professionals to continue to learn about new approaches and methods in the digital humanities and consider how they might apply what they've learned to their own work. The goal of this program is to increase the number of humanities scholars and practitioners using digital technology in their research and to broadly disseminate knowledge about advanced technology tools and methodologies relevant to the humanities. And we do this by funding institutes, workshops, seminars focused on sort of continuing and professional development for folks such as graduate students, librarians, archivists, and faculty members in the humanities, as well as related fields that are exploring or experimenting in the humanities. We hope that these institutes will provide an opportunity to share ideas and methods that advance humanities research and teaching through the use of digital technologies by bringing together humanities scholars and digital technology specialists from different disciplines. We also hope that they will introduce digital humanities topics to scholars who currently lack the expertise and resources or capacity in their home institutions. We want to build a community. And we also hope that these institutes will encourage reflection on and the interpretation and analysis of new digital media, multimedia, and text-based computing technologies, as well as how to integrate these into humanities scholarship and teaching. But ultimately, we hope to build inclusive communities of inquiry and contribute to the intellectual vitality and professional development of participants. And I want to note that this slide is strictly for as illustration. We don't expect you to copy down all of the topics, but it is a handy visual reminder that the Institutes for Advanced Topics program can fund an enormous range of topics. And we are of course, open to other ones that you may propose. Institutes can be built around an entire or capacious set of topics, activities, and we want you to be creative in how you're thinking about how to share your expertise with a broad audience. This program would also like to encourage you to consider working with the data, sources, and tools offered by our colleagues at the National Library of Medicine, at the National Institutes of Health, and the LC Labs at the Library of Congress. So for example, if you're considering an institute on the history of medicine and data visualization, or need a data set for an opportunity on using large-scale image analysis, my colleagues at the National Library of Medicine or the Library of Congress may be able to help. In the Notice of Funding Opportunity, we have listed the names and contact information for the points of contact at these two institutions. And I want to encourage you to reach out to them with your ideas and to see how they may help. So let's get some historical background for this program. Context is always important in the humanities. So over the last 5 years of this program, we have made 20 awards with an average funding ratio of 31%. And I will note that is a tremendously favorable funding ratio for the NEH. And I hope that you keep that in mind as you are considering applying for funding. We fund a high percentage of applications to this program. To get a sense of the entire history of the program, you can visit the NEH Public Database of Funded Projects, as well as read the white papers written by past Institute for Advanced Topics directors. We have provided links on the slides, and these links will be available in a PDF of the slides that we will post with the webinar recording as soon as possible. Now for the upcoming 2022 competition, our anticipated funding level is approximately $850,000, and we hope to make between 3 to 6 awards. Now speaking of deadlines, this program has one deadline per year, and in 2022 it will be March 2nd, 2022. And let's review the eligibility for this program. Institutes for Advanced Topics applicants are institutions, not individuals, meaning that an eligible institution will be submitting the application via grants.gov on behalf of the project team. And only U.S. and territorial 501c3 nonprofit organizations, accredited institutions of higher education, state or local government agencies, and federally recognized Native American tribal governments are eligible to apply for institutes or to receive subawards through this program. What that means in practice is that nonprofit and non-U.S. organizations are not eligible to apply for this program. I do want to point out one additional eligibility requirement for the Institute's program, and that is that individuals may only serve as a project director or co-director on one application per deadline. However, individuals can certainly serve as Institute faculty on more than one application at a time. Before starting your application, we want to do a quick check to be sure that you're in the right funding program. ODH, of course, does remain the home for funding professional development opportunities in the digital humanities. But there are several other options for funding professional development opportunities across the humanities at the NEH that may be of interest to you. My colleagues in the Division of Education Programs offers the Institutes for Higher Education faculty or K-12 educators. My colleagues in the Division of Preservation and Access offer the Education and Training Program that helps to develop knowledge and skills among professionals responsible for preserving and establishing access to humanities collections. And if you're interested in holding a conference, a symposium, or a workshop to plan a specific project, I want to encourage you to check out the Collaborative Research Program in the Division of Research Programs, or the Digital Humanities Advancement Grant Program right here in the Office of Digital Humanities. We also have a link in the slide to a blog post that's designed to help you navigate the various options for funding digital humanities across the NEH. Now, of course, as you're sort of thinking about your project, there may be a number of options that you're considering, and I want to strongly encourage you to get in touch with the NEH staff early on so that we, along with our colleagues across the agency, can help you find the right funding program that will support the professional development or training opportunity that you want to offer. I also want to note a few activities that the Institute's program does not fund. And the full list of restrictions is found in the Notice of Funding Opportunity on pages 22 and 23 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. But I want to call your specific attention to 3 of them. The Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities does not support graduate or undergraduate courses or programs in the digital humanities. They do not support programs that are not regional, and we mean multi-state, or national in scope in terms of where their participants are drawn from. Or we do not support institutes that are held outside of the United States and its jurisdictions. And to get a sense of the programs that we have funded in the past, you can visit the page on the NEH website that lists the upcoming and past institutes for advanced topics in the digital humanities. You'll be amazed at the breadth and depth and design of the institutes that have been offered over the years. For example, the University of Florida offered a multi-week in-person institute on Caribbean studies in the digital humanities, with continuing follow-up sessions that were held virtually the following year. This institute built on the university's strength in Caribbean studies, including their leadership of the Digital Library of the Caribbean. The University of Pittsburgh offered a series of two-day workshops to explore approaches to long-term sustainability of digital humanities. And these workshops were hosted at the University of Pittsburgh, but were also held across the country, including Brigham Young University, Brown University, the Georgia Institute of Technology, and Oklahoma State University. Some of our current or upcoming offerings include an online and in-person mentorship and training program to facilitate collaboration among scholars at the Spatial Archaeology Residential and Online Institute, SARO, from the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, that's devoted to large-scale archaeological analysis of objects, structures, sites, and landscapes. Another current open opportunity is from the Santa Fe Institute that includes an online course on computational and quantitative methods for cultural analysis of large-scale digital sources, and that will be followed next year by a more advanced in-person workshops for early career scholars. So it's an example of a hybrid offering. So now that you're certain that the Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities is the right program for you and your colleagues, and that's great. And I just want to have a few basic things to keep in mind. The Institutes for Advanced Topics awards may be for up to $250,000 in outright funds, and no matching is required for this program. The period of performance is up to 36 months, with a start date anytime between September 1st, 2022 and September 1st, 2023, although I will note that most programs begin at or right around September 1st, 2022. With a March 2022 deadline, it's not too early to begin brainstorming with your colleagues about a program that you would like to offer, and to start gathering and compiling the different required components. The Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities Program resource page, which is linked here on the slide, serves as a dashboard with some of all things related to the application process, including links to the application materials, frequently asked questions, budget guidance, sample funded applications, and due dates. And in fact, that program resource page is how you got to the webinar today. So you've already found the program resource page. We at the NEH always recommend that you start by downloading and reading the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or as we call it, the NOFO. The document is what was formerly known as the Application Guidelines. So download the NOFO, read it a couple of times, and you want to keep this handy throughout the entire grant writing and submission process. The reason that you should have the NOFO handy is that you want to identify all of the required components in the application early on. We don't want you scrambling 2 days before the deadline, for example, trying to gather letters of commitment from your institute faculty. Do this now because you know it's required. Let the NOFO serve as your guide for writing the application. Read and follow all of the applications, because your application will not be considered eligible for review if it's late or if it does not satisfy all of the program requirements dictated in the NOFO, including things like page limits. So we want to really encourage you to be careful and obey all of the musts and shoulds throughout the application. And to help you keep track of all of these components, we've put together a checklist on pages 6 and 7 of the NOFO. You'll see that some of the items are grants.gov forms, while others are PDF attachments. The entire grant application will be submitted through the grants.gov portal by your Office of Sponsored Research or your Grants or Development Office. So now is the time that you should start working with your colleagues in those offices to discuss responsibilities and expectations for completing the application on time. Do not wait until a day or two before the application is due to go to that office. Your colleagues can help you with the budget. They can also help you set up a workspace in grants.gov, but they are professionals and have many other items on their plate, so get on their schedule early. So as your project team begins writing and developing the proposal, use the application pieces to begin your argument. Organize the narrative using the section headings that we provided in the NOFO for each section or component. The NOFO also offers crosswalks to demonstrate how the narrative and the application components will be evaluated by reviewers. I've identified those here in the list on the right, and we'll talk through each of the review criteria in the next 5 slides. Criterion 1 is the intellectual significance and potential impact. We are the National Endowment for the Humanities, so humanities significance is, of course, our first review criteria. You'll want to use the significance and as well as the impact and evaluation sections of the narrative to make your argument that your proposed professional development opportunity is important and needed. Ensure that your intellectual rationale is clear and persuasive. In other words, why do you want to do this? Justify the digital methodology or technologies to be studied at the Institute. Be sure to situate that institute among others of a similar nature. And you can use that list of previously funded NEH institutes as a starting point, but you'll also want to be sure to review the offerings from the Digital Humanities Summer Institute at the University of Victoria, and those from the Humanities Intensive Learning and Teaching Institute, or HILT, hosted by the University of Pennsylvania. And do keep in mind, just because a topic has been previously addressed doesn't mean that a new or revised offering isn't needed. We just want you to be sure to clarify how this institute will build on that past work or break new ground. And if there happens to be any prior Institute for Advanced Topics in Digital Humanities project directors in today's webinar, you'll need to provide evidence that a second or third offering is warranted. For example, how many applications did you receive and what did the evaluations say? Criterion 2 addresses the conception, definition, organization, and description of the program. It's the what of the proposed offering. In the narrative's curriculum and work plan sections, as well as the separate work plan and course line attachment, you'll need to justify the chosen format, in-person, all virtual, hybrid, for the proposed topic. If you're going to be offering it at multiple sites, have you thought about who might also co-host with you? You'll also want to demonstrate how you considered how the components work together. Is there an appropriate mix of lectures, discussion, hands-on activities, and independent work? You want to show that you've allowed adequate time for the proposed activities. It's okay for project participants to be uncomfortable, but we don't want them to be so frustrated that they give up. In the work plan and course outline attachment, provide a clear sense of what will happen before, during, and after the active part of the Institute, and ensure that it's clear who on the team is doing what. A work plan should always have people included in it. Now, criterion 3 is about the participants. It's the for whom of the proposed project. Participants are actually the heart of why you're proposing this institute. In both the significance and participants section, you'll want to address the NOFO prompts about the following. You want to note that you have thought carefully about your intended audience. Who are you doing this for? If you say you're doing it for everyone, you may end up doing it for no one. You want to provide details about your recruitment strategies, as well as any outreach activities to particular communities of humanities faculty members and participants and professionals. You want to describe plans for recruiting a diverse and inclusive pool of applicants, including those from historically underrepresented communities and individuals with disabilities. You'll need to be specific and show that you are aware of particular affinity groups and networks. You need to go to them with your publicity plans. And then finally, you'll want to tell us how you will select your participants. When would you anticipate posting a call? Who's on the selection committee? And if you're considering offering something multiple times and at multiple locations, who is responsible for getting the word out for those particular locations? Moving on to criterion 4. This criterion addresses the appropriateness of the host institution and the institute team. This is the by whom criterion. We need to know who the host institutions are and the qualifications and expertise and levels of commitment of the project team. In the institutional profile, make the case for why you and your institution should host the institute. Describe any facilities and related resources to support an academic community. Are there special libraries or laboratories that participants will have access to? Do you have any field trips planned? Will you be providing any access to specialized data sets as well? If you're proposing an all-virtual institute, describe any experience that you've had in hosting such activities. And of course, institute faculty are so crucial to this project. In the staff, faculty, and consultants section of the narrative, demonstrate that the institute faculty are appropriate for the institute topic and activities. And then in the separate biography attachment, you can provide further information about the project directors, the institute faculty members, and other team members. This is your space to show that they have the experiences, expertise, and skills to contribute to the proposed institute. Just a quick note, do not submit CVs with your application, or your application will be considered non-responsive and ineligible for review. Use the biographies attachment. If funds are supporting a position without a named staff member, such as a project coordinator, that you anticipate being filled by, say, a graduate student, be sure to include a position description in that attachment that adequately identifies appropriate skills and expertise that is needed for hiring an individual to fill that award. We also encourage applicants to include letters of commitment from the project team members. Panels will want to know that you have the right people aligned to the right topics in a cohesive way to provide a meaningful experience to the participants. Now, criterion 5 is about the impact, the evaluation of the project, as well as the proposed budget. We ask you to describe your evaluation plans both during and after the institute. In other words, how will you know that you're meeting your goals? Are you doing formative evaluation during the institute, checking in after each offering? How are you evaluating the overall impact of the institute? These institutes are about building communities of humanities professionals around a particular topic or approach. So describe any plans that you have for sustaining that community after the active part of the institute. Every Institute for Advanced Topics has a website, of course. So detail how that project website will showcase the institute curriculum and participant work, and describe where that institute will live. Be sure to budget appropriately for faculty and staff of the institute. These projects can be quite labor-intensive, and we at the NEH and our panelists want to be sure that people are compensated for their labor appropriately. And finally, be sure to describe how participants will be compensated. For those institutes that have an in-person component, will you be offering travel reimbursement and per diem? Or will you be offering perhaps a flat rate in the form of stipends? There is no one way to compensate participants, but we at the NEH want to ensure that cost is not a deterrent for participants. So think carefully how to best ensure that your target audience can fully participate in your institute. A few tips and reminders. Remember, this is the NEH. As I said before, humanities significance is always the key. Have a clear sense of how you can use your expertise to build a community of digital humanities practitioners. Design a feasible offering with a reasonable budget. This is public funding, of course. Be realistic about what you can accomplish in a proposed professional development opportunity. Depending on the topic, a 2-day workshop can be just as valuable as a multi-week event and will provide an opportunity for those who might not be able to take time away from their current job. And of course, you'll always want to clearly describe your intended participant audience and your plans for connecting with them. As I mentioned before, participants are the heart of this program, and no matter how exciting an offering it is, if it's not designed with an audience in mind and geared toward their needs, panels will have a difficult time recommending it for funding. Once you've submitted an application, it takes about 6 to 7 months for the NEH's rigorous multi-step review process to be completed. Now, of course, this can seem pretty long, so I want to break it down for you so you can see why this is the case and to know what happens once you hit that submit button. After the application deadline, NEH staff must review all submissions for completeness and eligibility. We then recruit up to 5 participants with an appropriate mix of subject matter and methodological expertise to review these applications. And for this program, you might even have a previous institute director on the panel. Peer reviewers have about 6 to 7 weeks to read and evaluate those proposals. And then everyone gathers for a meeting, and given the pandemic, it will probably be a virtual meeting, to discuss these applications in more detail. Staff then makes these recommendations after the peer review process is complete. Those funding recommendations are taken before our National Council on the Humanities, which is a presidentially appointed and Senate-confirmed board of up to 26 members of distinguished representatives of the humanities. The National Council meets 3 times a year. So that means for the Institutes for Advanced Topics in the digital humanities, applications received in March will go to our July Council. After the Council meeting, the NEH chair will consider all of the advice and recommendations that they've received along the way, from the peer reviewers, from the staff, from the National Council, but by law, that person makes all the final decisions about these awards. And then finally, you, the applicants, are notified. We understand it's really hard to wait that long, but I hope that gives you a more concrete sense of why it takes a while to hear about a submitted application. And this is true really anywhere at the NEH. This is a pretty standard sort of review cycle. For this program, the staff at the Office of Digital Humanities offers applicants an opportunity to submit a draft for us to read and comment upon. It's not part of the formal review process, but many applicants find it helpful. We ask applicants to mail one file to the ODH inbox, and in that file you can include a draft narrative, a preliminary work plan and course outline, and even a preliminary budget or budget sketch. Now, if you don't have all of those elements, that's okay. We just ask that you send as much as possible so we can initiate a conversation with you. For the Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities program, the draft deadline for the 2022 deadline is January 23rd, 2022. As you're preparing your applications, or as you may be working on your drafts right now, I just want you to be aware of some resources that my colleagues and I have developed for applicants like you that's linked on this slide. I've also linked to the database of funded projects again. We encourage you to reach out to us with questions that you may have about your project or about any piece of the application process. You should never hesitate to get in touch with the Office of Digital Humanities staff. We are here to help you. That's our job. We also want to encourage everyone out there to consider volunteering to serve as a peer reviewer, whether for this program or for other NEH programs. It doesn't matter if you've applied to an ODH grant program before or not. If you're interested in serving as a peer reviewer for this program or for other NEH programs, please send us your name and a short biography, maybe a link to your personal webpage, or perhaps if you're at a university or college, maybe your departmental webpage. Serving as a peer reviewer can be an excellent way about learning about the application process and learning about the variety of work that's being done across the digital humanities today. So as we sort of wrap up, I want to take another minute to review some important key deadline dates. The next deadline for the Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities program is March 2nd, 2022. And applications must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time through the grants.gov portal. But don't wait. Grants.gov is not managed by the NEH, so we encourage you to start this submission process early. Again, working with your grants office or your office of sponsored projects or programs, because they will be submitting your application on your behalf. If you find an error in the application after it was submitted, you may resubmit the entire application package with the corrected and complete materials as long as you do so before the deadline closes. So if you find a mistake after a week, 10 days, or even 2 days after the deadline closes, unfortunately it's too late and you'll have to wait for the next deadline. So submit early. We will accept drafts up until January 23rd, 2022. So please do send in something by that date. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It is a draft. And the project can start anytime between September 2022 and September 23. Most institutes' award periods do have a start date closer to that September 22 deadline or date to give a project team plenty of time for publicity, recruiting, participant selection, and then the active institute and the follow-up activities. And particularly if you're proposing multiple versions of your institute, you want to give yourself plenty of time. And let me conclude by reminding you that my colleagues are here to help you and I am as well, as you prepare to submit an application to the Institute's program. I've provided our contact information here. We want to encourage you to send an email to ODH at odh@nih.gov. I promise we do respond to those emails. We check that email inbox every day. I can reassure you that there are people behind that inbox, so please do get in touch. And now, so this concludes sort of the active part of the webinar in terms of me sharing information with you. And now I want to hear if we have any questions from the audience. So, Elizabeth, are there any questions for us?
Jen, I'm looking now, and there have only been just a handful of separate questions that were handled privately. So nothing at the moment. I do have somebody asking what is the expected date to output the conference. And so by that, I anticipate what they mean is how soon after the deadline would they actually start the Institute activities. So I said, you know, if you're applying to this upcoming deadline, this coming March, Institutes would typically start the following summer. So you'd spend, you know, that academic year preparing for it. And then typically we see that people do the actual in-person or online institutes, you know, in the spring or summer of the following year. So I'm not entirely sure if that answers this person's question.
And certainly I do want to encourage you to follow up with us if you do have questions, but yes, depending on sort of the length of your offering and how much lead time you need to sort of get the word out, particularly if you're trying to serve an underserved audience who maybe hasn't felt part of the digital humanities in the past, you're going to need to spend more time on publicity. Give yourself some time during what we call the award period, and then the active sort of institute sort of happens later on in the award period. So there's a difference between an award period and when the institute happens. And so keep that in mind as you are developing your work plan and then the course outline for the specific professional development opportunity. Thank you, Elizabeth. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing anything else at the moment. Maybe we'll give folks just a few minutes to review all that they've heard so far.
Okay. Let's see. These are, for those of you who are really thinking about it, offering it and you're just not sure, I really want to encourage you to consider submitting a proposal to direct one of these institutes. Over the years, I've had an opportunity to visit many of these institutes. They're an incredible opportunity to really connect folks to the digital humanities and to learn from the participants. It's also a great opportunity for those of you who have developed expertise in a particular area of the humanities to take leadership in this space, to work with your institution. It's really an opportunity to share what you've learned and you've developed over the years, and to really share that with sort of a real broad range of participants in the humanities. They're incredibly intellectually gratifying.
Okay, Jen, we do have a question that's sort of related to that, which is there any insight to share about multi or transdisciplinary proposals? Do you want them to be strictly humanities or to see other disciplines?
I will note we've had some really wonderful transdisciplinary institutes, ones that have been directed by someone in the humanities along with a computer scientist. And they've drawn in participants from a range of different disciplinary humanities disciplines as well as related disciplines. That's one of the exciting things about these Institutes for Advanced Topics is sort of the mix of faculty members and institute participants. The topics have to be related to the humanities, but the definition of the humanities is extremely capacious. The types of activities, the work that's happening in the digital humanities, from critical algorithmic studies to studies of the use of artificial intelligence in the humanities, really need to have space to bring together folks from a range of different expertise. So take this as an opportunity, if you're considering directing ones, to build, in some ways, who do you want to work with? Who's the dream team out there that can serve as institute faculty to share that expertise and start building folks to think critically about how to use these new methodologies, these new approaches for work in the humanities. So this is really an opportunity to think about how you can sort of build a team and build a community.
All right, great. Thanks, Jen. We do have another question, which is there a deadline for completion? So if you were to start in, say, September of 2022, hold your institute in the summer of 2023, when would the expected completion date be?
And that often depends on sort of what follow-up activities you're planning. Are you going to continue to have your team meet, say, monthly in a virtual space? Are you going to have a showcase the following year where their participants can show the work that they've done to each other and maybe even to a public audience? Usually institutes, the award period can be up to 3 years. So what can you do in that space? Which is why I want to encourage you, even though you can start as late as September 2023, most institute award periods start much earlier because some of these institutes have sort of a long tail. And that's pretty exciting. It's one thing that's really been a hallmark of this particular program. It's not one and done. It's one and continuing conversation.
Great, thank you. Okay, we do have a question from someone asking, is there a way to see if there have been previous proposals from my institution? And I shared with that person the link to the NEH funded projects query form, so you can see, what has been funded or awards. I'm not sure if Jen, if you have that link in your presentation or not.
I do, and we also, another good place to look is the list of current and past offerings for the Institutes for Advanced Topics program. And even if your institution hasn't offered one, this is your opportunity to sort of take the lead on that. Be the first one. Someone always has to be first. But also, even if your institution hasn't offered one in the past, take a look at the sample applications from other host institutions that we've made available on the program resources page. That'll give you a sense of sort of what different institutions have brought to bear. You don't, we've really been gratified by the types of institutions that have applied. They have not all been sort of research one institutions. There's been a real range of types of institutions, from community colleges to research libraries like the Folger Institute. So really think about what you can offer institutes participants at your host institution. Sometimes it's just a place to meet, and that can be incredibly valuable as well.
There's no additional questions at this time.
So we can stay here for about 5 more minutes as you think about something, as you explore some of the links that my colleague Elizabeth Tran has provided in the Q&A. But once again, I really want to encourage you to really think seriously about proposing an institute. And you certainly don't need to propose a multi-week institute or one that happens 4 times. If this is your first time thinking of offering an institute through this program, just do it once, see how it works. Give yourself an out. You don't need to overpromise. You don't need to ask for $250,000. You can ask for a lower amount. Do what you can based on the expertise that you bring to the table, that you and your fellow faculty members can be. You can be sort of a tightly organized, well-designed professional development opportunity can be incredibly meaningful for the participants in that offering. And don't feel like you have to have an institute where you have a 3-week in-person institute with 25 faculty members and a year-long follow-up activity followed by a showcase the next year. If you want to do that, that's fine, but you don't need to. You can think and start small as well. What can you do well? That's what panelists would really want to see. They want to see that what you're offering is well designed with a clear eye toward your participant needs. And certainly we have been gratified in this past couple of years as we have gone through the pandemic, how flexible our institute directors have been. Some have moved what was meant to be an in-person institute to an all-virtual institute. Others have postponed it until we can meet safely. So the creativity and really perseverance of our institutes has really been sort of gratifying to the digital humanities community as well. So take a cue from them. If they can get through this, I suspect you can as well. Well, it's on my watch. It's saying it's 1:40. As I mentioned a couple of times during the presentation, we'll be making this webinar, the recording of the webinar, the slide deck, as well as a transcript of this discussion available for you, and we'll be posting it on that program resources page as soon as possible. I'll do my best to get it out within the week or so. Um, uh, but we also have other program resources available on that page. And of course, you should always feel free to write to the Office of Digital Humanities if you have any questions. These are, it's often a conversation that takes a while to get started. And we are here, we want to be available to you as you're thinking about proposing an offering to this program. Elizabeth, any other questions?
Nothing else at this moment.
And I do want to, I neglected to thank her at the beginning of the presentation. I want to thank my colleague and fellow program officer, Elizabeth Tran, for working with me today, as well as my colleague, Zach Robertson from the NEH Office of Information Resources Management. It does take a village to host a webinar, and I'm fortunate to have some wonderful colleagues at NEH to help me with this. But once again, we do hope that you'll seriously consider hosting one of these Institutes for Advanced Topics, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you all.